So this is a message to Sadhguru, and it's an important insight about how to help people gain enlightenment more easily and more quickly. So I think it'll be very interesting for especially his followers to get this information, but I wanted him to know about it as well. So this video is for him and for his millions of followers. So, hello, Sadhguru. My name is Tom Stone, and I'm making this video and sending it to you because you feel kind of like a brother to me. I've watched a number of your videos on YouTube, and sometimes when I hear what you say, I get the feeling that it could be me talking. But you're a great storyteller, and you obviously have a deep appreciation for the ancient Vedic wisdom, as I do. As you know, the ancient Vedic wisdom is estimated to be as much as 40,000 years old. It's the oldest knowledge on earth, and it is the most profound knowledge of consciousness. So this message is about some insights I've been fortunate to have to support your followers in making it even easier and quicker to be able to live the continuous experience of wholeness. I don't know how to reach you directly, so I'm making this message addressed to you in hopes that some of your followers or staff will find it on YouTube and bring it to your attention. I think that what I'm going to share with you and with them in this video may help you to help them on their path to true awakening. It is what helped me to make the shift from intellectual understanding of true awakening to actually living it. I'm putting the content of what I want to share with you into a PowerPoint as a script for this video so that I make sure that I cover the basics of what I want you to know about an important discovery I've been blessed with. What I have discovered is that there's a hidden body of bugged code in everyone's inner human software operating system that is the cause of virtually every problem in human life. I've also had the good fortune to learn how to debug and upgrade the source of this problem that is a kind of human antivirus software. Fortunately, it's simple and systematic, and anyone who wants to can learn it. I will explain exactly what this body of bugged inner human software is, and I'll explain exactly why this insight has such potential to help solve the problems of people having trouble with their spiritual development. We can dramatically speed up their progress by removing the real barriers to being able to live the continuous experience of wholeness. I'll also explain a systematic method of how we can debug and upgrade this body of bugged code to remove the primary thing that's holding people back in their evolution. People have not known about this hidden body of bugged code because of something that happens to everyone during their pre-verbal development. It's simple and very common. When we're very young, before we develop the ability to communicate through language, we have many experiences of being emotionally overwhelmed. We get good at distancing ourselves from the experiences of emotional overwhelm as much as possible. We get so good at distancing ourselves from any residual emotional pain that we start to assume that we have the emotional overwhelm problem handled. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, what the deeply conditioned habits of suppression and avoidance do is to perpetuate a state of not knowing that we don't know that there's a swamp of bugged code inside of us. The swamp is littered with landmines of residual, incomplete experiences of emotional pain. It's also cluttered with the residual experiences of what may be called reactive emotions that are the result of unmet expectations and projections of possible negative outcomes onto the future. People have become so good at emotional suppression and avoidance that they don't realize the extent to which all these unresolved disruptive emotions are influencing their decisions. An explanation of how our thoughts and decisions are influenced by this bug code is simple. There are basically four kinds of thoughts that influence our decisions. They are practical thoughts, intuitive thoughts, ego-based thoughts, and emotional pain-based thoughts. Practical thoughts are the most common kinds of thoughts that people have. These are things like directions to a location, a shopping list, putting an event on your calendar so you don't forget it, etc. Intuitive thoughts are a faculty that everyone has that can be thought of as an ability to remember the future. This means that everyone has some ability to sense that something is coming. Now, ego-based thoughts are the expression of projecting possible positive or negative outcomes onto the future. Ego-based thoughts are caused by the residue of experiences of what may be called reactive emotions. They are the result of unmet expectations and projections of possible negative outcomes onto the future. Emotional pain-based thoughts are caused by the residue of incomplete experiences of being emotionally overwhelmed. Everyone's inner human software is like a swamp littered with landmines of the residue of incomplete, painful emotional experiences. People have become so good at emotional suppression and avoidance that they don't realize the extent to which all of these unresolved, disruptive emotions are influencing their decisions. This has been affecting our thoughts and decisions our whole life. Getting rid of these inner human software bugs can profoundly change the world and help make it easier for people to truly awaken to what they really are. In fact, over the years, I've discovered that this hidden body of suppressed emotional energies is the only thing keeping people from living the continuous experience of wholeness. Stopping crime and war. Things like crime and war in the world are indicators that way too many decisions are being made under the influences of the residual hidden energies in people's cluttered inner emotional landscapes. Emotional incompetence. Every kind of conflict in human life is caused in some way by the presence of our cluttered inner emotional landscape. This makes people fundamentally emotionally incompetent. Do you know anyone who handles their emotions well? It's quite rare. With a completely clean inner emotional landscape, there would be no basis for thoughts and decisions that produce conflicts and disharmony. We could consider science to be the religion of our day. And the difference between science and true spirituality is science is looking at life with an attempt to understand it with a purely objective perspective. Embedded in double-blind, placebo-controlled research models is the notion that if the results are consistent enough, that a law of nature could be found, and this requires attempts to get subjectivity out of the way. Scientists are trying to find truth by looking for it in pure objective truth. But this is an illusion. There is no purity of objective truth. Someone designs the scientific studies, which is subjective. Someone interprets the studies, which is also has some subjectivity. Pure objectivity doesn't exist. In the science process, there are always three aspects to it. There's an observer, there's an object being observed, and there's the process of the observation. To a truly awakened person, this process gets transcended. Awareness is aware of awareness. The observer is awareness. That which is being observed is awareness. And the process of observation is awareness being aware of itself. There is nothing but awareness. Awareness is all there is. This is where something unchanging can be found. This is the only experience in which there is no separation between the subject and object. But in the state of pure awareness, there are no separations. It is often referred to as non-duality. But the essential thing here is that non-duality can't remain just a concept. It has to be directly experienced. Fortunately, the human body is so refined and sophisticated that it is possible to directly experience pure awareness. In fact, it's easy to experience it. There's a simple technique that I call the quietness technique. You just sit quietly and notice the sounds in your environment. You notice the sensation of your body sitting in your chair or on your bed. And you notice the thoughts that are coming and going in your mind. Then you notice that thoughts are occurring in a background of silence, emptiness. That silence is your awareness. But you don't stay in that experience for long because another thought comes along and interrupts the silence. But the thoughts don't stop coming unless you fall asleep, of course. As you do this over and over again, you start to get the sense of that empty quietness more and more present in your awareness. There's a useful analogy here. If you look up at the sky on a partly cloudy day, you can see the clouds and you can see the sky. Just like that. And the way you do it is you just look off to the side of the clouds, and there's your awareness right in the background. It doesn't require any effort to do that. As I said, you just look off to the side of the clouds, and there it is. It's always there. So the clouds are like the thoughts, and the sky is like your awareness. So experiencing awareness is simple and easy. But just getting short glimpses of awareness isn't a true awakening. A true awakening is when the silence is always there, whether you're experiencing thoughts or perceptions through the senses. It's like having a pure blue sky all the time. What prevents that from happening? This leads us to the most important point of this video. People get so good at suppressing and avoiding their incomplete experiences of the energy of emotions and store the residue of them in their body. They do this because it starts happening even before we learn how to talk. It's a powerful form of pre-verbal conditioning. We get quite good at suppression and avoidance prior to starting to use language. When we grow up enough to start using language, we don't know that we have been deeply conditioned to suppress our experience of emotional energy. It has become our default habit of attempting to get as far away from the experience of emotional overwhelm as possible. The problem is that when we grow up and start to use language, we don't remember that we developed this deep conditioned habit because we don't have words to describe it. It becomes our default way of dealing with emotions. The result of this is that we have an ever-increasing database of residue of emotional pain stored in our body. People who are in alternative methods of healing know that this ever-increasing database of unresolved disruptive emotions is one of the greatest causes of disease. But few people in healing or spirituality really understand what's going on, and even less do they know what to do about it. It's a very tricky problem to deal with something that you don't know is there. Not to mention that if you did know it was there, how do you find and remove all those energies? Is there even a way to make this unconscious process conscious and also find and resolve those energies? This is the essence of the challenge that makes the process of spiritual development have the reputation of being a long and difficult process. What if there was a simple set of techniques that did make it possible to make this unconscious process conscious? And what if there was a way to know exactly the best way to resolve each energy in such a way that it wasn't just suppressed, but was completely and permanently gone? If all that were possible and easy to learn to do, you could dramatically speed up the cleanup of your inner emotional landscape. Then your progress toward living in a state in which pure awareness is always there would be optimized. This would be learning how to get into the fast lane to having a true awakening. Well, I got some good news for you. It is available in an online training called the Freedom Practice 1. Even better, it's free. And even better than that, it's available in an app. There are versions of it that work on your computer or phone or tablet. It teaches you how to find and resolve the incomplete experiences of the emotional pain that you've been unconsciously holding in your body. And when you resolve them in this way, they're gone, and they're gone for good. That means they don't come back. The only way that they would come back would be for you to re-traumatize yourself. And as you get good at doing the techniques you learn in the Freedom Practice One training, you start getting much more conscious of what's going on, and you re-traumatize yourself less and less. This is the fastest way to clean up your cluttered inner emotional landscape and rapidly get that pure blue sky state in which the experience of the limitlessness of your awareness is there 24/7, 365. This is the fast track to true awakening that never goes away. You still must take the time to use the app and do the techniques, but they're simple and easy to do. Integrated into the Freedom Practice One app is the Inner Greatness app. The Inner Greatness app gives you a way to guide yourself through the techniques at your own pace while keeping your eyes closed. There are big buttons on the screen that you can tap, click on, and that app gives you the next information or instruction of what to do. There are big buttons on the screen that you can tap or click on, and the app gives you the next information or instruction of what to do. The buttons are big enough that you can easily hover over them and just tap or click when you're ready for the next audio instruction. You only get the next instruction when you tap or click on the next button. It's designed that way because each person will have their own timing to complete the previous instruction before moving on to the next one. The way that looks on a phone screen is like this. So you can see at the top, we have inner guidance, we have the in technique, then it shows the number of audio clips in this technique and which technique you're on. So you click on start, it starts the whole process, gives you the first instruction, which is usually to sit quietly with your eyes closed comfortably. And then you start clicking on the next button and you keep your eyes closed as you continue to do that. There are also buttons for going back to the previous instruction or back several instructions if you want to hear something, or even starting over. People love this app. People say that learning the techniques of this app is what they've been looking for all their life. To get access to the Freedom Practice One app from your computer from a mobile device, give us your name and email on the form on this page. Get ahead and register now. Remember, it's free. Go to this page. So I'm going to leave that link on each page for a while so that you can copy it down while I move on with the video. The Freedom Practice provides the most rapid progress toward a true awakening if you do it daily. Most people do it for 20 to 30 minutes in the morning when they first get up. It's a great way to start your day. It's highly recommended that you use the locate technique, also taught in Freedom Practice One, to find and resolve at least one or more pattern of stored emotional energy per day. Within about 10 days to 2 weeks, you'll get several breakthroughs and you'll start to feel better and more relaxed than you may have ever felt in your life. We also have a forum you can join and ask questions, share your experiences, and see other people's questions and the answers from our mentors who monitor the forum. The forum is there because you're going to be experiencing things as you explore your inner emotional landscape that you very likely have never experienced before. You also find that during the first few weeks of using the app and guiding yourself through starting to clean up your inner emotional landscape, that you'll begin to notice ego-based and emotionally pain-based thoughts coming up during the day. This is because you'll start to know what ego-based and emotional pain-based thoughts are like from your morning practice. In the past, you weren't distinguishing between different kinds of thoughts. All of your thoughts just seemed normal. But now you start to notice what ego-based and emotionally pain-based thoughts are as they show up. If possible, you stop what you're doing and immediately find and resolve the energies that are creating the ego-based and emotionally pain-based thoughts. Once you learn how to do the in technique using the app, you'll also learn how to find out technique energies as well. The unconscious process of suppression and avoidance is also the primary hidden barrier to gaining a true awakening. But we get so good at this that it happens without our awareness that it is happening. And we're unconscious that we're doing this. And we keep suppressing and avoiding new experiences of possible emotional overwhelm. They do this because it starts happening before we even learn how to talk. Science is starting to come around. The development of string theory is a pretty good description of pure awareness. There's only one thing, and that's awareness. Heaven. If people were trained to be truly aware, it'd be like living in a community of angels. It'd be like a kind of heaven. Heaven on earth. If we're going to inspire people on earth to upgrade their inner human software and get rid of the basis of all the conflicts that continue to produce crime, domestic violence, child abuse, suicides, wars, and every other kind of problem, we'll need a prototype of what heaven can be like. And now with human software engineering, we have the technology for being able to do that. We're turning humans into angels. The unconscious can be made conscious. We can teach people how to find and get rid of their collection of hidden disruptive emotions. So going deeper, at this point, it may be useful to have a deeper understanding of the nature of our bugged inner human software and how it can be debugged and upgraded. Emotions have both content and energy. And due to an over-reliance on the intellect and intellectual understanding, which I'll explain a bit later, when dealing with emotions, most people focus on the content, not the energy. The content is the name of the emotion and thoughts and memories about it. The energy is the sensation that we feel in or around our body. There are two kinds of emotional energies, as shown in this chart, of useful and not useful emotions. On the upper left, you can see the useful emotions are things like love, compassion, happiness, joy. Even fear can be useful when the fear comes up as a way to protect us from getting harmed. On the lower left, actually on the right, we see the other main category of emotions are the unresolved and not useful ones, which tend to be depleting and disruptive rather than being energizing and empowering. And as you can see with the two long arrows, we have two categories of unresolved, not useful emotions. On the left, we see the circle around painful internal emotions, which are things like trauma, emotional pain, heartbreak, resentment, and grief. And the figure to the right of that has this dot in the kind of solar plexus region, which is representational of some tight knot or ball of energy held inside the body in a kind of localized, constricted, concentrated way. And the word in is under this image of the person because we use the in technique to resolve these internal painful emotions. The other main category of unresolved, not useful emotions are called reactive external emotions. And as you can see from the two small arrows, there are two subcategories here. And that's because these reactions are reactions to stories we're making up about the past and the future. The stories about the past are upsets that we've had from our expectations not being met. These are things like anger, disappointment, frustration, sadness, depression, and so forth. The other subcategory are from projecting possible negative outcomes onto the future, which tends to create worry, fear, anxiety, panic attacks, etc. And you can see on the right that there's a sort of cloud or aura of energy surrounding and engulfing the person. And we use what's called the out technique energy to be able to resolve these kinds of emotional energies. So as you can see on the chart, there are two kinds of emotional energy. The painful internal energies that tend to be localized, and they're the residue of incomplete experiences. And the other category is the external reactive energies. They radiate out into the space around us, and they're reactions to stories in our mind. Two kinds of emotional energy fields. Some emotions, such as love, happiness, joy, compassion, even fear, can be useful. Most other emotions are not useful and become the causes of costly mistakes. Most problems and solutions are in the energy, not the content. The ego-based and emotionally pain-based thoughts are held inside of us. We call this our inner emotional landscape. As there are only two kinds of emotional energy fields, we only need two techniques for resolving them. However, there are many entries in these two databases of emotional energies. As shown on the chart, the techniques are called the in technique and the out technique. The in technique energies are localized and concentrated, and the energies are inside of you. The out technique energies are more diffused. They're more like a cloud or mist or aura of energy that surrounds and engulfs you. And you're inside the energy field. The following set of insights are the result of years of research looking into the answers to the question, what are the deepest causes of problems in human life? And the deepest causes of problems is the three central causes on the chart that you're about to see. These are the most fundamental ones. These three appear to be caused by becoming identified with the three aspects of every human experience, which are the knower, the known, and the process of knowing. It was not possible to go deeper. And here's a chart of the insights about the 12 causes of human problems. And it's this one, the suppression and avoidance one, that's really the most central one at the basis of really all of them. This conditioning causes the accumulation of incomplete experiences of emotional pain, and the energies are held inside of us as tight knots or balls of energy. But we suppress these energies so well that we can't feel the pain anymore. We think the pain is gone, but it's not. These residual energies cause our emotional pain-based thoughts, but we don't know that this is happening. This is the main form of pre-verbal conditioning that causes most problems in human life. So expectations and reactions is down here on the lower left of the chart. It's an aspect of being attached to things. In this case, being attached to or identified with the stories of possible positive or negative outcomes onto the future. And these reactions are entirely self-created. They only exist in our mind. We feel them around us, all around us in our body or in the body. But these are caused by stories, which are the expectations and reactions to what we think is happening or going to happen in our life or happened in our life in the past. This conditioning is a result of the projection of positive and negative outcomes onto the future. These are stories made up in our mind. They're not perceptions of things that actually exist. They only exist in our mind. They are the cause of our ego-based thoughts, but we don't know that this is happening. More about intuitive thoughts. They can be thought of as the ability to remember the future. It seems that there's an aspect of awareness that is not limited by the physical sensory organs. This makes it possible to have experiences of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching things in awareness without using the physical sensing organs. An example of this is silent reading. We don't have to read out loud to get the meaning of what you're reading. This is because long ago, people discovered that you could read words and hear them in your awareness and get the meaning. People's ability to trust and act on their intuitive thoughts varies according to how clear their awareness is. It's a question of to what extent their inner emotional landscape is cluttered with the residue of emotional energies that trigger ego-based and emotional pain-based thoughts. More about ego-based thoughts. They're quite different than intuitive thoughts. They're not perceptions of things that will be experiencing or that already exist in the case with intuitive thoughts. Ego-based thoughts are made up in the mind and only exist in our mind and not in the real world. They're based on the upsets that we get when our expectations are not met. There are things like anger, disappointment, frustration, sadness, depression, heartbreak, grief, etc. They are also based on projecting possible negative outcomes onto the future, such as worry, anxiety, fear, panic attacks, etc. They are mainly about the future and not about being present. More about emotional pain-based thoughts. They are mainly about the past and not about being present. Everyone has lots of experiences of being emotionally overwhelmed during our pre-verbal development. As we learn how to talk and begin human interaction using language, we forget that we developed the deeply conditioned habit of suppression and avoidance of emotional pain. As this habit is a consequence of pre-verbal conditioning, our inner emotional landscape is cluttered with many incomplete experiences of being emotionally overwhelmed. And because the level of suppression and avoidance of emotional pain has been so effective, it continues causing the number of emotional pain-based and ego-based thoughts to grow throughout our lives. Everyone has all four kinds of thoughts influencing their decisions to varying degrees. There's a method of testing that makes it possible to compare intellectual information with experiential information gathered via the senses. This makes it possible to measure the extent to which people decide and act on each of their four kinds of thoughts. This process results in a simple matrix that in human software engineering terms we call a decision influences assessment, or DIA. Having prepared hundreds of DIAs over the years, it is possible to show some average ranges of DIA scores in the following chart. These are the common average ranges. As you can see on the left, we have decisions are influenced by practical thoughts, intuitive thoughts, ego-based thoughts, and emotional pain-based thoughts. And the optimal column, just to the right of that, is that it's optimal when practical thoughts are influencing our decisions 100%, and intuitive thoughts also 100%, and the ego-based thoughts and emotional pain-based thoughts both at 0. So as of March, I was checking the averages of people, hundreds of people, and the practical thoughts are typically very high, between 86 and 92. Intuitive thoughts are typically quite low, between 14 and 20. And this is because they're sort of written over or static covering over them from the energy of the reactive emotions and the trauma and emotional pain. The ego-based thoughts tend to be 47 to 58% influencing our decisions. And for the emotional pain-based thoughts, 42 to 59%, even broader range, influencing our decisions. Now, there's some quotes about intuition by famous people. For example, Steve Jobs, the founder of Apple Computer, has said, and this is a famous line from him, "Have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary." Now, this is numbers I took for Steve Jobs from his past, after he had passed away. And at the peaks of his work, he had very high practical thoughts, 98, and pretty high intuition at 66. So it didn't take being at 100% in order for him to create what would become one of the largest companies in the world, Apple Computer, just 66. And he had 14% reactive emotions, 15% influence of trauma and emotional pain. Those are fairly low, but they are the things that caused him to not be at 100% for his intuition. The next one is follow your instincts. That's where true wisdom manifests itself. This is a quote from Oprah Winfrey, a famous TV talk show host. She apparently became a multi-billionaire by following her intuition. Not an uncommon phenomena when you really follow your intuition highly. And here's what she did. Her intuition was at 78%, practical thoughts at 96%. And the ego-based thoughts are at 13, emotional pain-based thoughts at 12. You can see these are dramatically different than the averages that we saw on the first chart. And here's Albert Einstein, famous scientist. He said, the only real valuable thing is intuition. Now, his intuition was operating at its peak at a whopping 85%, influencing his decisions. Practical thoughts, 97, also very high. And his reactive emotions, only 6%, and his emotional pain-based thoughts, only 12%. As far as emotional confidence is concerned, this guy was doing very well. Now, systematic guidance is needed because these quotes from these famous people make it clear that they somehow know or knew how to trust and act on their intuition much more than most common people. They all say that this is a major key to their success. But although they know how to do it themselves, there's not much guidance provided for others in how to learn how to do it too. And that's because these people spontaneously developed these abilities or somehow knew how to do it, but it didn't come with a roadmap or an owner's manual. So although they got there themselves very high, they don't know how to guide other people to do that. So we have a unique process, and that process that does a systematic method of cleaning up your inner emotional landscape, that one can be easily learned to be done by anyone. We even have an app that allows you to tap a button with your eyes closed and hear a next instruction for guiding yourself through each of the experiential techniques. The main purpose of this video is simply to let you know about this pre-verbal conditioning. People seem to sense that there's something missing, but so far it doesn't seem that what I'm describing here has come to light. This process has occurred because of the unconscious nature of the presence of the hidden collection of unresolved disruptive emotions. There's also a kind of common acceptance of things like crime and war, as if these are natural things that we can't do anything to prevent. HSE now has the possibility of changing this widespread acceptance of things like crime and war by having a new way to address and solve the age-old cause of these problems. This deep conditioning of suppression and avoidance has also caused a kind of over-reliance on intellectual understanding. After all, if you can't directly experience something with your senses because you're so deeply conditioned to avoid directly experiencing things, then resorting to overly rely on one's intellect is an obvious fallback position. You need at least intellectual understanding to get by with basic functions in the world. But this is problematic because you can't give the experience of the taste of a strawberry and really know what it tastes like with only attempts to describe the taste. You have to take a bite. In the world at the moment, people accept things like crime and disharmony, conflict and war as just a part of the picture of what human life is. For ages, we've become resigned to the idea that this is just how life is, and we have to try and make our best of it. This is because the cause of these problems has not been well understood until now. So no one has known the real source of the problems, or even less, what to do about it. Punishment for crimes isn't working. Rehabilitation is not effective because it's not getting to and resolving the real root cause of the emotional incompetence that is at the basis of criminal behavior. This is all due to the low levels of emotional competence in everyone that no one has known exists, so that no one has known how to even approach the problem, much less find a way to solve it. It's important to recognize the difference between traditional therapy used in attempts to rehabilitate criminals and training people to become truly emotionally competent. The case I'm mentioning next is not about a criminal, but rather about a Vietnam veteran who had survived the war, but had been deeply traumatized by it. He was still suffering from the residual trauma when I met him 43 years later, after his time in the war. He'd been diagnosed as having PTSD at the Veterans Administration. He had nightmares every night for 43 years. He'd been getting cognitive therapy for 17 years at the VA, but still had his nightmares every night. He came to me after hearing a lecture I had given. Using human software engineering techniques, I was able to help him find and resolve the 7 traumas that we were able to determine were at the basis of his nightmares. The next day, I got a call from him to report that he had slept for 9 hours for the first time in 43 years and had not had a single nightmare. This was the first thing he had tried that had really made such a dramatic difference. I was delighted for him, but not surprised, because I know how powerful the HSE techniques are. But does it last, you might ask? Shortly after that, his traditional therapist at the Veterans Administration told him she thought that he didn't need the therapy sessions anymore and could stop having them. I saw him at a local event in our city about a year and a half later, and I got to ask him how his sleep had been since that session we had done for getting rid of his nightmares. He said that it transformed his life, and he was now helping other returning vets from the Gulf War who were going to the VA to get help with PTSD. This is not an isolated case. Human software engineering consistently works for getting to and resolving the true causes of PTSD, crime, domestic conflict and abuse, and many other problems in human life. Now that we know what the true nature of the causes of problems like PTSD, crime, war, and antisocial behavior is, we now have the opportunity to create emotionally competent citizens who would make up emotionally competent societies. To inspire people to become emotionally competent is vastly better than the strategy of punishing them for being emotionally incompetent. And we have another physics principle working in our favor from wave interference. We don't have to get everyone on the planet to individually become emotionally competent. You may be familiar with the phenomena of coherent states called a phase transition. It's a principle behind how lasers, superconductivity, superfluidity, and other coherent states get created. By lowering entropy, it only takes the square root of 1% of a population to become coherent, and the whole system goes through a phase transition and becomes coherent. In our case, the entropy is the energies of the unresolved disruptive emotions still held inside. Now that this knowledge has come to light, it would make total sense to incorporate emotional competence training right alongside intellectual competence training in our education systems. The opportunity to change human life in a very fundamental way, as I'm suggesting, has extraordinary implications. It's kind of hard to imagine how good things could get. Well, that's it. I have all the insights, tools, and techniques to make this happen. I hope that your followers get some great benefit from using this app and enjoying the True Awakening program. Respectfully, Palm Stone.